Hello students and namaste everyone. I am Dhaval sir and our today's topic is from your standard 8th literature part unit number 9 the Great Stone Face part 1. So students, I've already started with the explanation of this chapter. Okay, and the writer of this chapter is Nathaniel Hawthorne, and this story is in the abridged form. So I've already explained you what is the meaning of abridged form. Okay, with the omission, that means the removal of some words or paragraph with the same sense of the main story. Okay, it was written in the shorter form, which is known as abridged form. Okay, so in the first part I had already explained you, uh, I had already given you the introduction and I had explained the whole chapter in brief in the form of summary. And today we'll start with the explanation of the chapter, that is line by line explanation. Okay, and as you can see, this chapter is divided into two parts. So in this lecture, okay, we'll complete the explanation of part 1, and yes, from here, that is part 2, we'll understand the chapter. Okay, that is in the next lecture. Okay, so part 2 will be explained in the next lecture. So let us begin with the line by line explanation of this chapter. Okay, so that is the Great Stone Face part 1. Okay, fine. So seen from a distance, hilltops and huge rocks seem to assume various shapes, right? So many a times, if we look at the mountains, okay, or the hills, some kind of shapes can be seen which is formed on them. Okay, they may resemble an animal or a human figure. People attribute stories to these shapes. Okay, some stories come true, others don't. The Great Stone Face is one such shape that reminds the inhabitants of the valley of a prophecy. Prophecy means bhavishwani. Okay, what was it? Did it come true? Right. So the writer is talking about the prophecy. So we'll begin the chapter. One afternoon, when the sun was going down, a mother and her little boy sat at the door of their cottage. Okay, talking about the great stone face. They had only to lift their eyes, and there it was. That means they were sitting at their home, and from their home they could see the uh, stone face, that is the great stone face. Okay, and they were talking about it. Okay, so they had only to lift their eyes, and there it was, plain to be seen, though miles away, with the sunshine brightening all its features. That means, though the hill was at a distance, but it could be seen very clearly, okay, in the sunlight, and the each features of the stone could be clearly seen, and it was visible. And what was the great stone face? The great stone face was a work of nature. Okay, it was naturally formed on the perpendicular side of the mountain by some immense rocks which had been thrown together so that when viewed at a proper distance they resembled the features of a human face. So ultimately the writer is saying that uh, at the top of the hill, and with many hills attached with each other, the stone face could be seen. Here in the picture you can see, right, exactly in the center, that is in the perpendicular, okay, at 90-degree angle. So what is further said? If the spectacular approached too near, he lost the outline of the enormous face and could see only a heap of gigantic rocks piled one upon another. But seen from a distance, that means when someone came closer, okay, the features, that is the face or the nose and everything, could not be seen clearly. But if it was seen from a distance, the clouds clustering about it, the great stone face seemed positively to be alive. That means when it was seen from a distance, okay, it looked like a real person. It was the belief of many people that the valley owed much of its fertility to the uh, beaming face that was continually beaming over it. Okay, so what is the meaning over here? Beaming means kind or gentle. So the kind or the gentle face that was continuously beaming, okay, beaming over it. So uh, what is written? A mother and her little boy, as we said earlier, sat at the door of their cottage, gazing. Gazing means looking at the great stone face and talking about it. The child's name was Ernest. Okay, mother said he, while the great stone face smiled on him. I wished that I could speak, for it looks so very kindly that its voice must indeed be pleasant. If I ever see a man with such a face, I should love him very much. What mother is saying? That mother said he, while the great stone face smiled on him. Okay, so mother and the child is are looking at the face, and they could see, or they could visualize that the great stone face is looking at them and it is smiling at them. Okay, if an old prophecy should come to pass, answered his mother, we may see a man sometime with exactly such a face as that. What the mother is saying, that at some point or the other, uh, a person from the same valley with the same resemblance, that means who looks same like the great stone face, will come. Okay, and he will be a great man. So the meaning of prophecy is written statement that tells what will happen in the future. So as I said, that is Bhavishwani. So what is written? What prophecy do you mean, dear mother? So this is the question that Ernest is asking to his mother. Eagerly inquired Ernest. Please tell me about it. Okay. So his mother told him a story that her own mother had told her when she herself was younger than little Ernest, that at some future day a child should be born, okay, near her, here, that means in the valley, who was destined to become the greatest and the noblest person of his time, and whose face in manhood means when he will be grown up and is uh, elder enough, okay, should bear an exact resemblance means in the same looking, means looks and everything will be the same. That means the likeness of the great stone face will be the similar to the person. Okay, so should bear an exact resemblance to the great stone face. Many still had faith in this old prophecy, but others took it to be nothing but ideal talk. Okay, so some people believed it to be true, and others were not serious about this talk. Okay, at all events, the great men of the prophecy had not yet appeared. That means the people in the valley, at many occasions, they kept on waiting for the great man, but he had never appeared. That means he had not appeared till date. "O mother," cried Ernest, clapping his hands above his head, "I do hope that I shall live to see him." That means what the young child is saying, what the child is saying, that I must live to see him. That means I hope so that till until I am alive, I can see the person, okay, who is the resemblance of the great stone face. His mother was an affectionate and thoughtful woman. It was proper, she thought, not to discourage the fanciful hopes of her little boy, so she said to him, "Perhaps you may." That means the mother was very positive, and therefore she said to the child that it might be possible, or it is possible, that in the near future, when you grow up, you can also be the resemblance of the great stone face. Okay, and Ernest never forgot the story that his mother told him. It was always in his mind whenever he looked upon the great stone face. He spent his childhood in the log. cottage where he was born, okay, was dutiful to his mother and helpful to her in many things, assisting her much with his little hands. That means the child was very good enough, always kind, always helpful to his mother, and more with his loving heart. Okay, in this manner, from a happy yet often pensive child, pensive means thoughtful child, he grew up to be a mild and quiet youth. That means he was very quiet, okay, and he was very simple also, okay. Ernest had had no teacher, but the great stone face became one to him. That means he always learned something or the other by looking at the great stone face, okay. When the work of the day was over, he would gaze at it for hours. Gaze means, as I said, he would keep looking at the great stone face until he began to imagine that those vast features recognized him and gave him a smile of kindness and encouragement. That means he felt that the face which is formed on the great stone face is looking at him and is giving him smile and is encouraging Ernest to become a very kind person. Okay, about this time, there went a rumor throughout the valley that the great man who was to bear a resemblance to the great stone face had appeared at last. Okay, so the talks in the valley started, and the people began talking that the person who is the resemblance of the great stone face has arrived. So, who was that person? We'll see. Okay. It seems that many years before, a young man had left the valley and settled at a distant seaport, and his name was Gathergold. Okay, so Gathergold, which was his name, had set up as a shopkeeper and, being sharp in business matters, had become so very rich that it would have taken him 100 years only to count his wealth. Okay, so they are talking about Gathergold, who had become very rich. In time, he thought of his native valley and decided to go back there and end his days where he had been born. So Gathergold had decided that now, as he had earned enough money, he will go back to the valley and he will spend his remaining life in that valley only where he was born. Okay. Further, Ernest had been deeply stirred by the idea, stirred means moved, by the idea that the great man, the noble man, the man of prophecy, after so many ages of delay, that means they were waiting from the long time, right, was at length to be seen in his native valley. While the boy was still gazing up the valley one day and imagining that the great stone face returned his gaze, the noise of wheels was heard, and a crowd of people cried, "Here comes the great Mr. Gathergold." A carriage, drawn by four horses, dashed round the turn of the road. Within it, thrust partly out of the window, appeared the face of an old man with yellow skin. Right, so this is a description of Gathergold. The very image of the great stone face, shouted the people. Sure enough, the old prophecy is true. Here we have the great man at last. That means all the people in the valley, they were convinced that Gathergold is the resemblance or likeness of the great stone face. That means he looks exactly like the great stone face. Okay. And what greatly puzzled Ernest, puzzled means Ernest was not sure, that means he was confused. They seemed actually to believe that there was the likeness which they spoke of. He turned away sadly from the wrinkled shrewdness of that unpleasant face and gazed up the valley where the stone face seemed to say, "He will come. Fear not, Ernest, the man will come." That means when he looked at Gathergold, he could not find any kind of resemblance or likeness with the great stone face. And so he was very sad and he was returning back his home. And while going back to his home, again he looked up at the great stone face and he felt like the great stone face is looking at him and is trying to say that don't be sad. uh, the person, okay, or the person who is the resemblance of uh, the great stone face will come, and don't be upset. So this is what the great stone face was trying to tell the Ernest. Okay, so this is just the imagination of Ernest. Okay, in real sense the great stone face is not saying or speaking anything. Okay, so here the first part of this chapter comes to an end, and along with that our this lecture also uh, will get over. So I'll end my explanation till here. Okay, and the remaining part of the chapter will continue in the next lecture, that is the third lecture. Okay, so till then I thank you everyone for watching my video.